Imagine being rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night, feeling like you're finally going to get help, only to realize the worst part hasn't even begun yet. Are you ready for a story that will leave you looking over your shoulder? This is the story of the most unsettling night of my life. A night that started with a simple health scare, but turned into something so disturbing, I still can't fully explain what happened. It's not a nightmare. It's a real, terrifying experience that I'll never forget. It all started when I suddenly felt sharp, unbearable chest pain. I thought it was heartburn at first, but the pain didn't let up. It grew worse, I could hardly breathe, and I knew I had to get to the hospital, fast. My family rushed me to the ER, and I was admitted immediately. I figured everything would be fine. Doctors, nurses, medical professionals, they were all there to help, right? But from the moment I stepped inside that hospital, something felt wrong. The air felt heavy, and the hallways seemed unusually quiet for a busy hospital. It wasn't long before I started to feel more and more uneasy. Once I was put into a room, the staff seemed cold, distant. The nurse who came in to check on me barely made eye contact. The doctor came in, checked my vitals, and then left. Without explaining much, I kept pressing for answers, but they seemed to avoid eye contact and like they were in a rush. I tried to ignore it, focusing on getting better, but the strange feeling only deepened. I kept hearing the sound of footsteps outside my room, constant, but when I looked through the small window in the door, no one was ever there. Then, there was the nurse who came in at midnight. She didn't say anything as she adjusted IV and left. But when I checked my arm later, the needle was out of place, and I was bleeding more than I should have been. At around 2 a.m., I started feeling worse. My chest pain returned, more intense than ever. I called for help, but no one came. I rang the call bell repeatedly, but it felt like hours before anyone responded. When the door finally opened, it wasn't the nurse I had seen earlier, it was a different one. She was strange. Her expression was flat, her movements stiff. She didn't say anything when I begged her for help. I felt like I was losing consciousness again, but she just stood there staring at me as not moving. Her eyes didn't blink. Then suddenly, she turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open. I could hear her talking to someone in the hallway, but no one came to check on me. The pain was unbearable, and I knew something was wrong. I was all alone. A week later, I got a call from the hospital's billing department. They said there was no record of me ever being admitted. No file, no charges, nothing. I told them I had discharge papers, but when I checked, the name on the paperwork wasn't mine. It belonged to a patient who died in that same hospital 3 years ago. I went back to confront them, and that's when they told me something that still keeps me up at night. The room I was in, that entire wing of the hospital, had been closed for years. No staff were assigned there, no patients were allowed. So, who helped me that night? And what room did I actually find myself in? Have you ever felt trapped in a nightmare while seeking help in a hospital? Well, I did, and it was worse than I ever imagined. Let me take you back to one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, a hospital visit that quickly turned into something straight out of a nightmare. I went to the hospital for a seemingly routine issue, something that seemed urgent but not life-threatening. I was in pain and needed medical attention. Little did I know, this visit would be the beginning of a series of unsettling events that would leave me questioning everything about hospitals. At first, everything seemed normal. The nurses were friendly, and the doctors were efficient. But soon, things started to feel off. I was left waiting in the ER for hours, hearing strange noises from behind the closed doors. People came and went, but no one seemed to take my concerns seriously. And then, when I finally got a room, the situation only got worse. I started feeling a sense of dread, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The longer I stayed, the more the strange occurrences escalated. The worst moment came when I woke up in the middle of the night. I was the only one in the room, hooked up to an IV. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and I heard footsteps approaching. Then, a nurse I'd never seen before entered. her face pale and distant. She didn't speak as she adjusted my IV, her movements oddly stiff, her skin gray. But then, just before leaving, she leaned down close to me and whispered, in a low, unsettling tone, "You're not supposed to be awake." The words sent a chill down my spine and I froze, wide-eyed, unable to respond. It felt like I couldn't breathe, the walls closing in around me. Before I could speak, she injected me with something from a syringe. I felt a strange drowsiness take over, as if whatever she had injected into me was starting to take effect. My vision blurred, and I drifted off to sleep, unwilling, yet unable to resist. When I woke up the next morning, everything seemed normal. The nurse was nowhere to be seen, and everything was back to its routine pace. I felt groggy but fine, almost as if nothing had happened. But that whispered line kept playing over and over in my head. "You're not supposed to be awake." The more I thought about it, the more it unsettled me. I had no idea what she meant, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly avoided something far worse than I realized. I eventually left the hospital, shaken but physically okay. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that I had narrowly escaped something much worse. That experience changed the way I look at hospitals. Sometimes things aren't always as they seem. Have you ever felt like the doctors just aren't listening? Like you're invisible? Well, I did, and it almost cost me everything. This is the story of my unexpected hospital nightmare. A visit that started with a routine checkup, but quickly spiraled into something far more terrifying. Sometimes, even when you're seeking help, the worst things can happen when you least expect it. I went in for what I thought would be a simple consultation. I wasn't feeling well for a while, dizziness, fatigue, and some chest pain, but nothing seemed too urgent. I figured it would be easy for the doctors to diagnose. But as I sat in the waiting room, something strange started happening. The longer I waited, the worse I felt. The pain started intensifying, and my vision began to blur. It wasn't just a bad day at the doctor's office anymore. It felt like something was horribly wrong. When I was finally taken to the exam room, no one seemed to take my symptoms seriously. I was brushed off as overreacting by the nurse, and even the doctor seemed distant. I was told it was probably nothing, and that I should just rest. But as I lay there, waiting for them to finish their routine checks, the pain was unbearable. I felt faint, dizzy, and started to black out. I tried to call for help, but no one responded right away. My panic grew. Was I being ignored? Did I even matter? It wasn't until I nearly passed out that someone finally noticed. A nurse rushed in, panic in her eyes, but it was too late. My heart was racing, and I could feel the cold sweat on my skin. She frantically grabbed the crash cart and called for a doctor. Turns out, I had been on the verge of a heart attack, but nobody realized it until it was almost too late. In those moments of waiting and being ignored, I thought I was going to die. And I couldn't shake the feeling that if I hadn't spoken up when I did, I wouldn't have made it. I survived. But I'll never forget how easily I could have been written off. That experience taught me an important lesson, always. Trust your instincts.